Hey, my name's Theo Davis. I am a palette knife painter and watercolor artist based in Kansas City, Missouri. And I want to show you how to palette knife paint a sky in this video. If you find the tips and tools that we're going to talk about here helpful, please do me a favor and press the like button. And if you want to see more videos in the future, go ahead and click subscribe. But basically here, we're just going to focus on the sky. There's lots of things that we could talk about in an entire video, but we're just going to focus on sky because I think sky is just underrated, that when you can do a good sky, it really helps your painting to pop. So here, this is a palette knife painting that I'm doing of downtown Overland Park, Kansas. And I'm only using two colors here. I'm using cobalt blue and I'm using white, titanium white. And I'm mixing them together to get some different shades of that cobalt blue. So as you see, I went ahead and just spread some toned down cobalt blue for most of the sky in the top. And now I bet you're wondering, wait, is he putting white at the very bottom? And no, I'm not putting pure white at the very bottom, but it is a very light cobalt blue. So I've mixed some titanium white along with a little bit of cobalt blue, and that's actually going to give this part of the sky a slightly bluish tint. But you're still probably wondering, well, wait, that looks so much brighter than the rest of your sky, Theo. Like, why did you do that? And this is where technique comes into place. This is where understanding like how the real world looks, how it works, and how it looks can really help elevate your paintings. So, for example, whenever you take a photo of a sky, regardless of where the sun's at, but let's say the sun is out of the picture, when you take a photo, you're going to notice that the top of the sky is actually a darker blue or a darker color than the horizon. The horizon is always going to be slightly lighter than the top of the sky, and that's that atmospheric pressure, atmospheric look that happens. I can't explain all the science behind it, but the reality is that whatever color is in the sky, it's always a touch lighter at the bottom, at the horizon, and it's always a bit darker at the top. So whenever you're making a painting, whether it's a palette knife painting or it is a watercolor painting or you're using color pencils or whatever it might be, as long as you make the horizon where the land meets the sky lighter than the rest of the sky, it's going to have this bigger feeling, this bigger sky feeling. It's going to help your painting to actually look like real life. Now, I like to exaggerate this phenomenon by making the base of my sky a whole lot whiter than the top of the sky. If I was going for a realistic painting, then I could do that, but that's not what I'm trying to do here. I am trying to create some stylized art that people would want to hang in their homes. That's something that I'm happy with, because usually if I'm happy with it, other people will be happy with it. So here I'm just taking, again, some of that white mixed with a touch of the cobalt blue and mixing it around the canvas and just helping to create that effect that I'm going for. Now I'm going to speed up the process just a touch so you can keep seeing as I'm talking through this. But now what I'm doing, you might think like, oh, that feels like such a contrast, Theo, that white along with the darker blue at the top of the sky. It doesn't look realistic. It doesn't even look cool. Well, that's because I'm working my way up. So I laid down the darkest blues that I'm going to use, and now I'm going to work from lightest back to darkest. So I'm working from the bottom, the horizon point of the painting, and now I'm working my way back up to where the darker blue is. And I'm going to gradually make, as I'm mixing my paint off camera, and let me know if you want a separate video about mixing paint as you go, but I'm mixing my paint and I'm making it slightly darker as I'm working my way up. I'm really working with 3 different values. I'm working with the lightest value, which is the horizon and most of what you're seeing. I have a darkest value, which is what the sky atop currently is. And then I'm going to introduce this sort of mid-tone mid-tone value that I use to blend both of the values together. So now that I have my lightest values and I have my darkest values, I'm going to start working on that mid-tone value. And so right here you can see that this isn't quite as light as the white blue at the bottom, but it's also not as dark as the rest of the sky, and that's because this is the mid-tone. And so now I'm going to be using my palette knife, and I'm just starting to slowly press against the canvas, gathering up some paint. And when I'm applying it, I'm applying it with my palette knife at a slight angle so that I'm not accidentally scraping paint off the canvas, but I'm able to smoothly lay that down on top. Now, for me, I don't frame my canvases. And so I intentionally went from the regular, like, I don't even know what size they are. It's like 1/2 inch canvas that people usually frame. I went to a 1 3/4 size canvas, so the side of my canvases are a lot bigger, and I tend to paint the side of my canvas because I just think it's a cool look, and I don't want to go through all the hassle and trouble of framing all of my canvases before selling them. So when my clients see that the side of my canvas is also painted and it's a little over 1 inch big, it pokes out from the wall, and it just looks like that's how it's supposed to be, which is true. It is how it's supposed to be, but honestly it's just my little way of trying to get around like framing, because that's just one more step in the whole process, and I really want my painting process to be as simple as possible. So here you can see clearly that mid-tone that I'm using for the cobalt blue. I mixed in about an equal amount of blue with an equal amount of white, and I'm starting to get this bit of a mid-tone. And again here, I am going ahead and just spreading it around. Now, when I'm mixing up my paints and my colors for the sky especially, I try my best not to be too much of a perfectionist. I try not to worry if the paint is perfectly mixed together so that as I'm spreading it, it's spreading out into one solid color. No, I actually like streaks of some slight white in there. I like streaks of darker blue in there, because I think it just gives it just gives this artistic flair when it is not perfectly even. Because again, I'm not concerned with creating a hyper-realistic piece of work. I am trying to make a stylized piece of work. Now, here is the part of the painting that I absolutely love. I'm actually going to create this slight curve in the sky. That curve isn't in the original painting, the original picture that I was basing this painting off of, but I just really like this curve because guess what? I saw another artist kind of doing something like this. It's totally okay that if you see something someone else is doing, to adapt that with your own style, because all of us are just borrowing techniques, styles, color schemes from one another, and then eventually you start to find your own voice. And what I noticed in this other artist is that when you're actually, let me back up a bit. When you're taking photography and you have a wide angle lens and you're trying to capture as much of a landscape scene as possible, what you'll find is that there's this curve that happens in your picture because you're trying to capture as much of the scene as possible. What the glass of the lens is doing is it's bending the light around so that you have more of the scene in your picture, but then you get this effect of this curve in the sky, and it just gives this impression that the sky is huge, and oh my goodness, that's the mark of a scene that is bigger than life. And so I've been starting to try and incorporate this in some of my paintings and drawings recently, and I really like how it came out in this particular painting as I am working on the midtones. Okay, and now this is the section of the video where it's all going to start to come together. So I'm taking the midtones and I'm going to start spreading them out a little bit. I'm going to start skipping space slightly so that it blends in with the darkest blue at the top. And what that's going to do is, as I gradually start to make little bits of space, as I'm starting to allow the darkest blue to shine through, and mixing in some dark blue as I'm spreading the canvas, it's going to give that color gradient effect that it's just gradually getting lighter and lighter and lighter, even though I'm really only using 3 tones of this blue. There's the darkest blue at the very top, there's a mid-tone that you can clearly see, and then there's a lighter, the lightest color of blue toward the bottom. There is no white in this painting. Everything has a tint of blue in it, so that I can turn up the color to be lighter if I still want it to, or I can turn it down to be darker. Even that dark blue in the sky is probably mixed with about half white, half cobalt blue, so I can go darker if I want to. But now you can clearly see me putting that curve into the painting. Even though that wasn't in the original picture, look at that. That's coming out so good, and I just love the results of it. So if you're trying to get into palette knife painting, I would just really encourage you to just buy a couple of cheap canvases. Get get blue, get cobalt blue, get like a cadmium red, and get just a cadmium yellow, and those are the prime colors that you need to make all the other colors. Then get white as well, and you can actually make black from mixing those 3 colors together, the 3 prime colors. And you can start painting right away. You can start playing around and messing with the sky, and you can add in other colors if you want to along the way. But I would always suggest, if you're starting off with oil painting, you're starting off with palette knife painting, you've never messed with oil before, don't do what I did and buy like 30 different colors, because you're going to be overwhelmed, and when the colors come right out of the tube, they actually don't blend very well together. Some of them are a lot more saturated and rich colors, some of them are a bit thinner, and so you need to add a lot more color in order to make them pop or blend with the other colors that you're using. And so here, this painting again is nothing but cobalt blue currently and titanium white, and I'm just mixing them together to get different values of color. And when you do that, you can practice skies, you can practice curves, you can practice like sunsets if you want to add in a touch of yellow, a touch of orange. But if you're just going for a regular daytime sky, boom, this is all that you need. Now, at this point of the painting, I'm starting to add in some of the other colors. I'm not going to show the whole painting process for the entire thing, but I will go ahead and show you what it looks like when it's done. However, I do want to show real quick me adding in some green, because you know what? There have been so many times where I've been happy with the sky, but then when I start to paint the rest of the picture, something feels off, and suddenly I realize, oh no, the whole sky is too white. I need to darken the sky. So I would actually stop my process, and I would go back and I would just kind of darken all the different tones. But here I'm using a pretty light green. This is actually going to be more of the highlights, because I'm actually a watercolor painter. And so when you paint with watercolors, you actually start with the lightest tones and then you build up to the darkest tones. However, with oil painting, it's traditional that you will start with the darkest tones and then build up to the lightest tones. And I decided, you know what? I'm gonna break the rules, and I'm gonna go backwards. And I'm actually happy with how it all turned out toward the end. So here again, I'm working with the lightest tones, because I really wanted to make sure those light tones match the sky, and then I go to the darker tones. And here is the final little stretch before we just skip ahead to the end of the video. But I really wanted to, again, I wanted to see what this green looked like with the sky. And as I was in the process of applying it, I was like, yes, actually this feels good. This feels right. This is going to turn out to be a really great palette knife painting. So let's go ahead and jump toward the end and see what the final product looks like. And boom, this is the final piece. It's completely finished, of downtown Overland Park, Kansas. And so this is a little suburb outside of Kansas City to the south. And I just love how this came out. I love the impressionistic style. I love the messy painting. I just love that the palette knife forces me to not get too caught up in the details. I'm just trying to create an impression of the scene so that when people see it, they're like, I know that place. I walk through that place. And it's just really cool when people connect with my artwork in this way. I'm actually making this art for an art show that's coming up, the Westport Art Show in Kansas City. It's like the biggest local art show of all of Kansas City. About 30,000 people attend every year, and I'm just super honored that I got selected to be one of the 200 artists that are going to be part of it. Couldn't believe I got accepted. So excited. So I'm trying to make a bunch of oil paintings, specifically palette knife oil paintings, before the show. So this piece will be available at that show. I'll also have prints of it, and I'll also have prints of this at my 2 art booths. I have 2 retail space locations, one at the Berrywood Painted Tree up in North Kansas City, and then I have an Overland Park location at the Painted Tree down in Overland Park. So I thought this would be a cool piece to obviously put in the Overland Park Painted Tree booth. But if you want to see it in person, come on out for the Westport Art Show. Would love to meet you, would love to show it to you, would love to sell it to you. And if you just love the painting process and you want to learn how to do it yourself, or you just enjoy watching the process, please hit that like button and the subscribe button, and I will see you in a new video. I put up new videos every single Monday. Take care.